Alright, AP update video and a little bit of some DBQ help. So, this week, coming up here, ending in the 8th, we are reviewing Unit 7. So you only have one unit this time to go through. So a little bit less work than the last couple weeks, which also gives you a little bit of time to make up that work if you missed it. However, I'm going to add a little bit of stuff in there. Highly recommend reviewing those crash course videos and all those key concepts I gave you, right? We have less work in class, so do a little extra studying on your own. Please don't make me assign stuff like that because you don't want to do a little bit of extra work. Anyways, with the DBQs, looking at some, I've had a little bit of mixed results looking at how you guys have outlined them. I'll see more writing here coming up in the next couple days as you guys submit stuff. But this is it, guys. This is it. This is our test this year. It's a short essay based on documents. So, we got to keep pushing on this, right? This is it, this is it, this is it. You're never going to have an easier year to pass the AP test than this year, right? They're gonna grade it a little softer, I would guess, and you only have to do one essay instead of 3, plus you don't have to do any short answer questions, and you don't have to do any multiple choice. So, we're in a good spot, okay, even though it might not always seem like it. So, going over just a random DBQ that I pulled up. This is from Unit 9, or Unit 8, which is not covered in the test. So, sorry, Unit 9, which we did at the beginning of the year, way back when we talked about Reagan and stuff. So, here's the prompt, right here. Explain the reasons why a new conservatism rose to prominence in the United States between 1960 and 1989, right? So, it is telling you in this prompt that a new conservatism rose to prominence, right? So all it's asking you to do is explain why. Why? So it's asking, say, give me 3 reasons why a new conservatism rose in the United States between 1960 and 1989. Okay? Now, before you come up with your thesis, it is good to review the documents and look for information in the documents that might help you come up with your thesis. So, the first document is a chart that talks about the unemployment rate plus the inflation rate in the United States during these presidencies, right? So, JFK was not conservative, right? He was a liberal. LBJ was more liberal. Then Nixon is more conservative. Ford's more conservative. Carter is a conservative Democrat, but he'd be more liberal than Ford or Nixon. And then Reagan, of course, is super conservative. So you can look at that real quick and take a look at that, right? It's background information. It's not required, right, on your documents, but you could, if they provide you with a chart like this, cite the chart as well. You could say, well, under Jimmy Carter, right, in 1980, we had combined 21% inflation and unemployment, right? And so maybe people decided that the liberal ideas of going back to the LBJ days weren't working out, right? Or maybe it's just Carter was caught holding the bag because he was the president when things were at their worst, it looks like here economically. Anyways, the documents provided, you got one here from Barry Goldwater, right, who, if you remember, in '64 ran for president but was seen as extremely too conservative, so he got railroaded, got destroyed by LBJ in the election, but then again, in 1980, Reagan has adopted just a whole platform, so Goldwater's kind of the architect for modern conservatism, so he's given his reasons, right? Saying the root evil is that government is engaged in activities in which it has no legitimate business. So he's saying the federal government is extending itself into places it should not be. Milton Friedman, a very conservative economist, right? He doesn't think any of the great reforms of the past decade actually achieved its objectives, right? A housing program intended to improve the housing conditions of the poor, to reduce juvenile delinquency, and to contribute to the removal of urban slums has worsened the housing conditions for the poor, contributed to juvenile delinquency and spread urban blight, he says. Nelson Rockefeller, okay, a Republican governor from New York, although I will say not the most conservative of Republicans. Anyways, he's a widow who lives alone, okay, works every day, pays taxes, and lives by those rules. He gets very little from my taxes when I can no longer walk on the streets and when I'm afraid in my own home. A letter to him. Okay, I was going to say, there's no way a Rockefeller is worried about that because the Rockefellers are all rich. So that's a constituent saying that to him. Document 4, Jerry Falwell, televangelist, okay, founder of the Moral Majority. His son runs a university, is it Liberty? It might be Liberty. University at this point, okay, given his reasons for it. Okay, document 5, the Republican Party platform. Document 6, okay, Teddy Holt, a homemaker and a member of the Stop ERA, Stop Equal Rights Amendment. Push, right? So you got 6 documents there plus the graph. Okay, all the documents come from conservative sources, so they give you some reasons. If you read through those, if you come upon a DBQ and you're like, I have no idea how to answer this, go through the documents and you can use some of their reasons, right? Now, what would I say if I were writing an essay on this to explain the reasons why a new conservatism rose to prominence in the United States between 1960 and 1989? I would blame some of it, I'd say, on economic conditions. So I'd say my thesis would be, okay, a new conservatism rose to prominence in the United States between 1960 and 1989 because the first point, okay, economic conditions maybe could be one that you might argue using this graph. Okay, I would argue, right, that America's generally a conservative nation in a lot of ways, and we had a liberal period there for 40 years, and big business clawed its way back into it. But I would say probably using these documents, right, I would say economic conditions worsened, especially they spiked under President Carter, right? That could be your first point. You can point to this graph. Or you could say that people like Barry Goldwater rose to prominence, right? Very, very conservative people rose to prominence. You could say people like Milton Friedman rose to prominence as well. One big one here that this one underscores, right, that both Friedman underscore and, say, this letter to Rockefeller underscore, is that there were issues in the intercities, right? When they talk about urban blight, they're talking about parts of cities that don't look good, right? This guy or this person writing here is afraid that they're dope addicts and welfare cheats, right, that are stealing the tax dollars that she's paying or he's paying, right, when they're afraid to leave their home. So you could say conditions in inner cities worsen, right? Right here, the moral majority, I would say a big reason could be the rise of evangelicals in the political sphere, which is what Jerry Falwell would be, right? So if you want to say a couple of those, right, say economic conditions worsened, there was the prominence of people like Barry Goldwater with extremely conservative ideas, and you could say issues in the cities, right, or you could say the fear of welfare scams or something like that. But the big thing here is that you come up with your 3 points. Those 3 points are up to you to come up with as long as you can argue them from the document, right? So, I need to grab a pen. Remember, your thesis needs to have 3 points in it, right? Those are going to be your body paragraphs. They are expecting a 5-paragraph essay. So, let's see here about moving this so you can see a bit of a whiteboard and I can do a little bit of writing. Ooh, there we go. And we adjust here, and it's not a great picture, but it is what we got. So, you could say, right, so conservatism rose from, what are the dates they had on there? 1960 to 1980, because then you need to have points 1, 2, 3. It could be economic conditions, it could be the rise of conservative thinkers like Barry Goldwater and Friedman. It could be conditions in inner cities, right? It doesn't matter what your 3 points are, but those 3 points are going to lay out the rest of your essay. This first point is going to be your first body paragraph. This second point is your second body paragraph, and the third point is your third body paragraph. Then you conclude. When you conclude, you restate the stuff you said in the essay, but you say it different. When we talk about your thesis, right, this is going to be the last sentence, ideally the last sentence of your introduction. Start with something broad, and you tailor it down. So for this question, I would probably say, between the years 1932 and I would argue later than 1960, because LBJ's after that, but this time frame that they gave us is 1960. Between the years 1932 and 1960, America engaged in the New Deal and the Fair Deal, which included programs and tax increases on the rich to benefit working class or poorer Americans. This idea was always controversial. There There was always fights against it. And starting in the late 60s and going all the way up through, I would say now, but through 1989, which is what the last date on that prompt was, a new form of conservatism rose in response to these programs. Then you can say the thesis, and then you can get going here. The last thing I will give you on advice for right now, as I get real close to the screen, you can see all that, right? Good. We go back to here, is that I am going to encourage you strongly as I can, to use all the documents they give you. You get extra points. They give you an extra bump, an extra point. And when they're grading, if you use all the documents, right? So try to use them all. Okay, you need 3 body paragraphs. In the body paragraph, right, you're going to say, if I said it was because of economic conditions, right, which is what I said the first point in my mock thesis was. Cite the graph, right? You could also cite in here, so I'd say, you know, economic conditions were getting worse between the 60s and the late 80s, and particularly they spiked during the Jimmy Carter presidency. Jimmy Carter was seen as more liberal than his Republican counterparts, right? So you'd cite the graph, but you could also cite in here this woman saying that her tax dollars are going in favor of dope addicts and welfare cheats, right? You could also say that that is part of an economic reason. There you go, you got 2 documents in there. After you give the quote and you cite it, all you got to write is document 3 in parentheses next to it. It's not a crazy citation. Then you give your opinion. So you lay it out, you give evidence to lay out your argument, and then you add a sentence of opinion to fully flush out your thoughts. And then you do that again with the next document, and then your body paragraph is done. You move on to the next one, same thing. Next one, same thing, and then you conclude. Okay, so that is my quick and messy DBQ guide for you guys. Look at those videos, look at those things I keep putting on there for you to help you with the DBQ. I don't think all of your outlines are awful or anything like that. I think most of them are actually pretty good, but they got to get a little better. Positive here is, end of this week is the 8th, okay? For one of you, there'll be a final. A couple of you, I think, will be a final. Email me if you're not taking the AP test. There's only 2 of you that didn't sign up for it. So send me an email so I can assign you the final if I need to this week or next week. But for senior, I think we only have 1 in this class. Finals got to be done by the 8th, so I will tell you exactly what to do for that. But for the rest of us, our test is until the 15th, right? So I'm recording this on the 30th of April, which means we got 2 weeks to work on writing, right? Make sure we know the content, which is important, and then make sure we know how to do the writing. So this week is all Unit 7, right? You're going to have 2 short answer questions. You got to answer them both. You got 2 DBQs. 1 you have to write fully. 1 you just have to outline. That's up to you. That's all on the AP Classroom, just like we've done the last 2 weeks. On our regular Google Classroom, you got a Unit 7 review, just like the other units we've done, right? You got 3 or 4 paragraph answers, and then a bunch of 1 or 2 sentence answers, so nothing too crazy. But to make sure we're working on our writing and to make sure we know the content, okay? There might be some additional stuff I might post, just dumb little quiz sort of things to make sure that you know the content, because the content's important. The content helps you write these essays. But next week, or say the week after next, the week of the test, we will work on more DBQ stuff. I will assign another DBQ for you to write just to make sure that we are there and that you're focused in and ready. I sent you all an email about how to make sure that you're both registered for the test and you got your testing ticket and all that stuff. Make sure you do all of that so you can take the test on the 15th and be done with it. I think that's all I got. If you have any questions about anything, right, I'll return some writings and stuff to you guys with some edits on there. If you have any questions, something you're struggling with, something you're nervous about, just let me know, and I'll help you through it. That's my job, right? I want you guys all to pass this test so you get the college credit, and so I look like an awesome teacher and all that stuff. So, with that, I think that's all I got here for your update. Keep going, keep pushing, only a couple more weeks, and then we're done, right? And then you can take a big breath and play Fortnite. I don't know. What do you kids play anymore? Clash of Clans? Anyways, until next week, happy writing.